está ouvindo o LAB LoyaltyCast, o podcast da Loyalty Academy Brasil. Aqui a gente fala sobre retenção de clientes, comportamento do consumidor, transformação de negócios e como você pode utilizar a fidelidade para aplicar dentro do seu mercado e trabalhar a retenção de clientes, colaboradores e até parceiros. Esse podcast é uma produção da Loyalty Academy Brasil e é patrocinado pela ABENF, a Associação Brasileira das Empresas do Mercado de Fidelização. Então, se porventura você se interessa pelo mercado de fidelidade, eu já vou deixar aqui na descrição o link do site da ABENF para você saber mais a respeito de eventos do mercado de fidelidade, a respeito de pesquisas de mercado voltado para o público brasileiro e também saber mais sobre as empresas associadas, quem está por trás aí da ABENF que tem feito acontecer essa parte de ecossistema de loyalty dentro do mercado brasileiro. Vale a pena acompanhar. E o episódio de hoje está muito mais do que especial. A nossa convidada de hoje é a Cristina Ziliani, que além de PhD, é professora na Universidade de Parma, na Itália, desde 1999 e trabalha também como diretora científica no Observatório Fedeltà. Pois é, eu não sei italiano, tive que aprender para poder trazer essa para vocês, que é basicamente um grupo de cientistas, voltados para o público de marketing, que trabalha pesquisas voltadas para a loyalty, para a fidelização de clientes. O trabalho da Cristina transcende barreiras, ela já escreveu diversos livros a respeito de loyalty. Além disso, ela leciona sobre gestão de loyalty em universidades e eventos ao redor do mundo inteiro. Palestras riquíssimas, incluindo Austrália, Brasil, Japão, Estados Unidos, Reino Unido e também França, Bélgica, Espanha e Tailândia. Olha só como ela já impactou milhares de profissionais de marketing no que diz respeito à fidelização de clientes. Toda a pesquisa científica da Cristina é voltada para o marketing de fidelidade, para a CRM e também para a retenção de clientes, experiência de clientes. Então, ela já tem mais de 50 artigos científicos publicados e também mais de 6 livros só focados nessa temática. No papo de hoje, a gente tem como host o Fábio Santoro para poder conversar sobre o tema que é os superpoderes do loyalty. Dentro dos superpoderes do loyalty, a gente vai conversar sobre a sua evolução, a sua aplicabilidade e trazer novidades sobre como a inteligência artificial abraça essa temática e também a gente vai conversar sobre citizen centricity, como que a gente trabalha essa frente de uma fidelidade voltada para o cidadão do mundo. Então, a gente vai trazer uma temática um pouco mais ampla no que diz respeito à fidelização de clientes, que vai muito além do comportamento ali de troca e vai mais para uma coisa interna e de propósito daquele público. Então, se você já gostou dessa temática, já deixa o seu like aqui nesse episódio e já vai de novo anotando as suas perguntas para poder deixar aqui no comentário caso você tenha alguma e anotar também como você vai aplicar isso dentro da marca que você atende. Então, sem mais delongas, fique à vontade e aproveite esse episódio aqui do LAB LoyaltyCast.
Cristina, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome to LAB LoyaltyCast, the podcast from Loyalty Academy Brazil. And last time we were together, 2 years ago, you attended to a conference in Brazil from ABENF Forum. It's the #1 conference about loyalty in the country. And your lecture was elected the best lecture of the day, so for sure we'll have a great episode with a lot of good content.
Yes, thank you. The Loyalty Observatory is a university research center at the University of Parma, and we have been doing research, applied and scientific, let's say for academic papers, consulting, training, education of graduate students in the fields of loyalty, CRM, and customer experience. Overall, the mission of the center is to support the development and the advancement of a loyalty culture in management. That is growing the goal of retaining customers and working for the customer's loyalty across companies in any industry. So that's basically what we do. We are very much involved in disseminating the knowledge we produce by having online events, by having a big annual conference that's coming up in October, and we publish white papers, and we share a lot of our knowledge. There's a lot on our website also, which is free. So for anybody who's interested after the podcast, if there's any, I'm happy to share the address.
Perfect. And you have a long experience in the loyalty landscape. Can you share with us a little bit of the journey, how, in your perspective, loyalty evolved from the last decades?
Yes. Well, I've started studying loyalty, as we said, some 30, 25 years ago, and I've seen loyalty management change over time. My idea is that we can see three phases in the evolution of loyalty management. Around the 1980s and 90, loyalty management was loyalty programs. That is the only things that would come to a manager's mind when you talked about loyalty was loyalty programs. They were developed and introduced because companies were realizing that there was a connection between retention and profit. The first studies were made in those years, and because of increased competition, companies started focusing on keeping customers, something that was not in the management textbook before those years, because everybody was focused on acquisition. Um, Loyalty programs, they proved successful very quickly, especially because very often there was only one company with a loyalty scheme in every industry. So it was the first entrant advantage, as the economists would call it. But because the tool works, everybody was copying it. From the States, it was copied in Europe. Especially the supermarket business in Europe was among the first to develop loyalty programs. If you think of the UK and Tesco launching Clubcard in the
Yeah.
mid 90s. And with the market becoming more and more crowded with loyalty programs, even the differentiation potential eroded. And this is when a new phase began. Companies started looking at the fact that they owned a database of customer information. So they started analyzing those data that maybe for years they had not looked into the database. They were simply running the points and the loyalty activities. And they realized that customers go through a life cycle. You have new customers, you have customers that are growing, customers that are declining as far as business concerned, customers that are at risk of churning, regained customers. And they decided that there was a lot of opportunity in working these relationships according to the stage they were in, a customer at a time. And so customer relationship management was born. And this phase, a phase where certainly companies that had a loyalty program had an advantage because it was built to collect data about the customers, but even a lot of companies who did not have a loyalty program, but they were in the position to have customer data, such as banks, for example. They didn't have loyalty schemes, but they had behavioral data. So they started doing CRM. And CRM, I would say, is still today the most common approach to developing customer loyalty. What is interesting is that I also see a third phase, a phase that we have entered, let's say, less than 10 years ago, and it's still very much in its early stages. I call this phase the customer experience phase of loyalty management because thanks to the information revolution, today companies have a lot of touch points. Customers develop their experience with a brand by touching many different touch points.
Mhm.
And these touch points, they influence the experience. And the customer experience has been proven to be directly related to loyalty and to retention. So companies today, they are working on the experience very much to change it and make it better, make it more positive, because it has a connection with retention. And if you work on the experience, it has a potential to be much more differentiated. But you need insight, and this insight you get from the data about your customers. So today, in order to do loyalty, you actually work on the experience. That's why I call it loyalty
Yeah.
experience management. And just to close on this, let me say that loyalty, by going through these three phases, has also moved up in the company ladder from being tactical. A loyalty program 20 years ago, 40 years ago, you could have it or not, but it was the same, to being strategic. Today, everybody has to work on the customer experience. You can call it with another name, working on the store format, working on the customer journey, but you are actually working on the customer experience with the goal of retention. So loyalty has become a strategic goal, and I'm very happy that it is as it is, because we can really see that it's going to become more important in the future. There's a lot of uh, gains to make in terms of understanding and also in terms of profit.
Thank you. Very nice. So, from 80s to 2000, the basic programs with base offers, basically. So, if everyone starts to having the same, it's a look-alike model. So, they had to develop to CRM and start working on bonus offers, individual offers, CRM. And in this new era that we are today, with lots of touch points and loyalty becoming more and more strategic. So we need to be in the small table with CEOs, CFOs, and have their sponsorship, their support to be able to influence the results and the stock market value from this company. So very good. And we know that you wrote a book. It's called Loyalty Management, correct? And it's one of the books we recommend our loyalty students in Loyalty Academy Brazil and also in ESPM University to read and to get in touch with good loyalty content. And I know that you explored a few cases around the world. Can you share a little bit more of what the readers can expect from the book, and if there is a Brazilian case in the book?
Well, thank you very much for mentioning the book, and I'm actually honored that you are using and suggesting the book in your courses. The idea of the book has come because, over the years, we come in contact with many managers, junior managers, senior managers in different type of companies, and we get a question very often: where can I learn more about loyalty? How can I prepare for this new job as loyalty manager? People, they get moved from a certain area of marketing and they have to take care of CRM and loyalty schemes. So they ask for advice and they say, I can't find a book that is telling me, a little bit of everything I should know about loyalty schemes and loyalty strategies. So we approached an international publisher, Routledge, and they loved the idea of publishing a book for an international audience of managers, but also graduate students, anybody who wants to learn why loyalty is important for business and what is the state of the art as far as scientific research regarding the effects of loyalty programs or the impact of CRM. And of course, there's also content from our research on sustainability, for example, and loyalty schemes. And to make it even more international, what we did, we approached our network of friends in loyalty, like you,
Yeah.
and the BEMF, the Brazilian Association, and we asked for cooperation to find great international cases. So yes, there is a Brazilian case. We have Dots, and I'm really grateful for the fact that they were able to prepare the case for us. There are 8 cases in total from 8 countries and 8 different industries.
Very nice. Thank you. And we know that as a practitioners, we know that loyalty has around 30, maybe 50 variables in any action. And if you miss one of the variables, you probably be in bad shape. So, for example, if you decide to make a promotional initiative and you miss one detail in the segmentation script, you will probably talk to people that buy every day saying that, oh, why don't you come back and buy with me again, etc. So it is a great way of differentiating, but it is also a complex discipline. So it's great to have courses talking about loyalty fundamentals, books talking about loyalty fundamentals. And our episode, it's called the Superpowers of Loyalty. I loved this term you brought. And Brazilian market is being pretty developed the last years. So you already know, but sharing with everyone, we have a very strong loyalty association, a BEMF, that sponsors this webcast with 12 companies associated to a BEMF. We have 3 huge coalition programs, which is not common worldwide. We have 3 huge airline programs, which is also, except US, probably not very common. We have a few very strong bank loyalty initiatives, and almost every retailer, from fashion to fast food to restaurants to ice cream, almost everywhere you will find at least a cashback closed loop solution running. So a lot of initiatives. Generally, the CEOs understand the strategic role that customer-centric strategies are playing more and more, that loyalty programs are influencing more and more. And sometimes we have a little tough time with CFOs, because CFOs, they always have the role of reducing costs, and sometimes they see the loyalty initiatives as cost and not as an investment that will bring ROI. So I'd love to hear more about the superpowers of loyalty and how it impacts the business, and how can we use that to influentiate and get support from CEOs and especially CFOs.
Yes, actually, I got this idea of calling the effects that loyalty strategy can have on the company the superpowers exactly for this. Because imagine, I've been training companies for 25 years about the virtues of loyalty, and 25 years ago, it was really, really difficult. Nobody would listen, and companies were focused on acquisition. So this idea of the superpowers is exactly to catch the attention of the top managers, especially, as you said, the CFO. In fact, let me start with my first idea of the first superpower. The first superpower is that loyalty is a strategy for growth, because very often when you talk with people about retention, they think that loyalty is something to keep the business as it is, to support the situation, but not for growing. So the first thing to do is to make them change their perspective and use research, because there are very nice pieces of research that have been published in international academic journals based on the performance of many, many companies that show that having a loyalty strategy contributes to superior financial performance. Let me just cite a couple. And again, if anybody is then interested in the references, I'm very happy to connect and provide them. The first study that comes to my mind was published in Journal of Business Research 4 years ago, and it clearly shows that there's a correlation between launching a loyalty program and having an increase in capitalization of the company on the stock market. So that's a very interesting thing. The financial market investors, they look closely at companies that have a loyalty program in place, because it's a way to grow retention, which grows customer lifetime value. And as you know, this is profitability in the long term, which is what capitalization is about.
Yeah.
Then there's another very interesting study that's about retailing, and it shows that retailers that have customer centric strategies, that is, based on CRM and using the customer database, they have higher gross profit margin compared to retailers who simply focused on growing the brand, which used to be the major way, the main way for growing in according to our marketing textbooks,
Mm-hmm.
our management textbooks. So this research again proves that companies that are focused on growing the customer base value, not the brand value, they have higher gross margins compared to their competitors. And then my favorite study was done in 2023, so it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
fresh. And that was based on studying over 2,000 companies in 11 sectors for 20 years. And that study shows again that companies that are focused on customer management, they have higher profitability. And the other interesting thing that I didn't know before reading the study is that today the customer based approach is more widespread, is more common around industries than the traditional brand based approach. Because we are also consumers. We always think about the big brands. We see big brands advertising on TV. uh, Fast moving consumer goods is probably the last sector where brand management still is dominating. All the other industries in the world, B2B, finance, insurance, utilities, retailing, their telephone, internet services, they're all based on a customer loyalty approach. So this is also very interesting that companies are adopting this approach more frequently than the traditional brand management approach. So to sum up, first superpower is strong connection with superior profitability compared to the benchmark in the industry.
Very nice. And for me, it makes total sense. If we go to the concept of the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, the ultimate question that Fred Reichheld brought to us, when you're going to try to forecast if a company is going to succeed or not, you ask for the customer if he would recommend that company to a friend. So if I focus on my customer database, I will have advocates from my brand, and then the brand investment is done, correct? If you have people that love your mark, your brand, they will talk about it, they will reference to friends, so you achieve both objectives. And we're not talking about just putting all the money here or there, but when you have to define your mix of marketing investment, you need to focus on the database. Great. I love it, the first superpower, and I'm curious to know what else would you share with us?
Okay, so the second superpower of loyalty is my favorite, and it has to do with the insight about customers that you can uncover thanks to loyalty strategies. In fact, by working on your loyalty program or your CRM, thanks to touch points today, you can collect a variety of data, behavioral, attitudinal, about your customers, and you can use this data to discover something novel about their preferences, about their behaviors. And that novel knowledge can really support, for example, new segmentations or creativity in the form of new products, new service ideas. In this space, one of the examples that I like the most is what the Asian pharmacy and beauty chain Watson, which is actually one of the biggest in the world, what they have done. Watson has a loyalty approach. It has had that for many years. It's an omni-channel approach. They use a lot technology in the store. They use the app to connect with the customer and provide services, and they analyze the data. So one thing they did, they analyzed the queries that their female customers make on the Watson website or through the Watson app when they search for cosmetics. And they realized that a lot of women in Asia look for cosmetics that provide the specific benefit of protecting the skin from pollution, because we know that there's a lot of air pollution in many big cities in Asia. So the company realized that this type of benefit in cosmetics wasn't really apparent in any specific product. And what they had the idea of developing a new line of products, and they partner with Shiseido, that's a beauty manufacturer, beauty products manufacturer of international standing, and they developed these pollution protection skincare products, and they are now exclusive to Watson. So that's a very interesting idea of leveraging the customer insight for differentiation, because in the end, if you have a product that others don't have, this will make your brand stand out. So that's just one of the many examples of the second superpower.
Fantastic. So use the data you capture not only on transactions, but also on researches or searches in the website to generate insights and use insights to drive consumer behavior. And I love it, the example, because normally you get the insights to offer something that you already have in your merchandise store. But in this case, they develop a product, and it's a great case for Brazil also. For São Paulo, we have a lot of pollution here, and the pharma businessmen that will be watching us, they may look for Shiseido. I know the brand because I have a very beautiful wife and two very beautiful daughters, so cosmetics is a relevant subject in my home, so very nice. And as Loyalty Academy, we like always to have something like the top 3 or the top 5, so you brought 2 superpowers. I'd like to hear at least one more, please.
Okay, so the third is the fact that the loyalty strategy can support the company in getting extra revenue streams. There are many examples here. Let me cite one of the topics that is most debated these days, which is retail media, which is not a new concept. It's the idea of companies especially retailers, but not only, selling advertising space to brands on all the different touch points they control. Again, this is not new because like 100 years ago, they would sell the space on the shelves or the space on the print media. Um,
Yeah.
but today you can sell the choice of the audience, meaning the retailers' customers, together with all the history of their behavior on the specific touch points that the company can control. And this space is highly valuable for brands. So this is one area. Many companies are exploring this space, especially because it's a high margin business. And, in the case of retailers, that's not always a high margin business. The case of Amazon is, of course, the inspiration for everybody. But today, what is interesting is that there is a correlation between the millions of customers you have in your loyalty database and the fact that you are able to make money out of retail media. Because if you really have a lot of knowledge, if you have a very large customer base, then this is very robust for developing insight and for selling the audiences on the different touch points to other companies. Actually, this idea of retail media connects a little bit to, I know that you call it other people money, which is a
Yeah.
broader concept. The fact that once you have a loyalty program, you can attract investment by other companies. So it's not only brands. For example, you can have additional revenue streams from payment systems, partnering with banks, partnering with financial institutions. That's another big area where companies can introduce high margin activities to produce more revenue, more profit for the company. But on this point, I know, for example, having learned about it from Dots, that Brazil is very advanced in terms of the connection between loyalty and payments. So maybe I don't know if you want to tell me something about the this area of the superpower.
Yes, for sure. So you mentioned Dots, and it's an operation that I get to know pretty well as a former executive and nowadays participating on the board. And Dots is very focused on this loyalty plus financial solutions strategy. And we get to use the bureaus to get information about credit limits from all the people in our country, but we enhance the credit score using SKU data from shops the consumer did at grocer, at pharma, etc. And once we get to have a very precise credit score, we are able to offer credit directly on the cashier from the supermarket or the pharma or other retailers. And it's a phygital operation because part of the operation occurs on the Dots app in the hand of the consumer, and part of the operation runs on the cashier point of sale system. So you can pay your shop in 3 installments, in 5 installments, in 10 installments with 2 clicks. So it's a very interesting approach. And we will have an episode about the coalition program soon. And we will explore in more details the financial products that Dots uses on its day-by-day, that Livelo, the other coalition, uses also, and Sticks. So the 3 huge coalitions will be together discussing with us opportunities and benchmarks. So it will be a great episode. Don't miss it. All right, so We have
Thank you.
our top 3 superpowers of loyalty, and I loved this opportunity integrating the retail media part, because as you mentioned, CPG, the consumer product goods companies, they are investing more and more into the retailers' solutions. And sometimes we see here in Brazil that the industry is offering a joint business plan where they offer premium space in store, premium space in tabloid, and also a batch of coalition currency or proprietary program currency that the industry can use to develop bonus initiatives with pretty big success. So it's very interesting how the puzzle starts to get to join. And in the beginning, when we talked about the 3 stages of loyalty, we talked about customer experience, and I'd like to get into more details on that. So how you see this new loyalty that has a lot of touch points along the way before the customer thinks about shopping, during the shopping, after the shopping, how loyalty can influence and generate a better consumer experience, both in the physical stores and in the online model.
Well, thank you. That's a very interesting question. I have been looking into this recently. And in fact, I think we mentioned experience before, and we said experience is this snowball of all the reactions of the customer that evolve continuously, cognitively, rationally, socially, to the interaction with the brand. And this happens along the journey, right? What we call the journey of the customer. Now, I looked at the journey, and first of all, I discovered that the customer journey is an expression that was first used at the very end of the 1800s. So it's very, very old.
Wow.
And it was used for the first time in the advertising industry. And it was designed as a funnel. We still use the idea of the funnel. We use it in digital, for example, in e-commerce. We use it even in CRM. Now, this idea of the funnel has a problem. It places loyalty at the end. So it's good to have this idea of the funnel, but unfortunately, it makes the idea go around that loyalty comes last. So first you do a lot of other stuff, and then the cherry on the cake is the loyalty program that comes last. That was very much the case in the 80s, maybe even 20 years ago, or maybe even now. So we should keep in mind that the funnel is no longer the norm, because consumers, we know that today they don't go through a very straightforward funnel. They go through journeys, and journeys are very rough and random because they go across a high number of touch points, many more than a century ago when the concept came along. So today, the challenge for a loyalty program and a loyalty approach is to move away from the bottom of the funnel and try to be relevant for the company in the other steps of the funnel, upstream especially. There has been research by a colleague in Germany, Professor Lena Steinhoff. She does research on loyalty programs, and she did a very interesting piece of research on where in the journey the customer sees the best support by the loyalty program. And what she found out, and that was for supermarkets, she found out that people mostly like the support before going to the store. Using the loyalty app, to do the shopping list, to clip the digital coupons, to check the points. So this activity is done before they go to the store. Not in the store, like the managers thought, because in the store, people want to have the hands free. They don't want to have to look at the phone, at least in Italy and in Germany. So it was interesting to find that people know in which part of their journeys they would like to be supported by the loyalty program. So it's important that companies ask. For example, I studied in depth the loyalty strategy of Starbucks. And if you look at the Starbucks app, uh, it provides so many activities and so many value added services to the customer in every single stage of the journey. Because, of course, what you can do with the app is the usual things like a store location, checking your loyalty points, checking the rewards that you have available. But you can also, for example, see if there are new products. You can receive personalized coupons every time you open the app, so it keeps it very fresh. You can tip the barista in the store. You can actually digitally tip the barista with the digital wallet with the money. You can pre-order the drink before you go to the store, and you can pay online with your wallet. And you can gift a Starbucks gift card with a click from the app. And there are many others. So this is just to mention that today loyalty is about improving the customer experience, we said, and the customer experience is made of many stages, not only at the end of the funnel. So this is a bit, the novel view that I think companies should explore together with their customers.
Very nice. You mentioned Starbucks. It's a huge reference worldwide and also here in Brazil. We bring cases from them in our courses. Another huge reference is Amazon Prime, which I think has millions and millions of customers participating worldwide. And it's interesting to see that loyalty can be even a tool to acquire new customers. It's more common on the coalition model because you have the coalition database and just part of those consumers, they buy from each of the brands participating in the coalition. So you can make acquiring offers to new customers. Who else have you seen doing good jobs in terms of customer acquisition that not only coalition or not only Amazon Prime that we know is so strong that they work on the acquisition process also?
That's a very interesting point. Actually, I can say that companies, at least in Italy, are looking very much into using the loyalty program to do acquisition. Actually, to do qualified acquisition, meaning getting people who are likely to be interested in the product. In fact, let me go a little bit back in history and then I come with a couple of examples from Italy. The very model of a loyalty program that supports acquisition is the member get member, which is a very old approach where the loyalty program member is rewarded if they bring a friend or a relative, and if the friend and relative also becomes a customer by shopping, they also get a reward. So it's a win-win situation, win-win-win, because the new customer gets rewarded, the current customer gets rewarded, and the company gets a new customer. So members get members. For example, in the banking industry in Europe is one of the most successful channels for acquisition of new customers. Having said that, which is a kind of a traditional and established approach of using loyalty for acquisition, there are two examples in Italy that come to my mind. One is Sorgenia. Sorgenia is in the utility industry. They provide electricity to consumers. And what you can do, you can register to their loyalty program, even if you're not a customer of them, in order to use the digital services that they offer, which help you count your consumption in terms of energy. It gives you training and tips on how to reduce your energy consumption, and you can install a meter for your energy consumption to monitor your how environmentally friendly your family and your appliances are. And this is interesting because the company, by opening up this service to anybody, even people who don't pay the bills with Zogenia because they have another provider, they were able to create interest. And then from those services, they actually see people deciding to switch to Sogenia and become customers. So that's an interesting approach of using your services to acquire new customers. And the second one is Fastweb. Fastweb is an internet service provider in Italy. And if you go on their website, they advertise that you can have a 30 days free trial of their loyalty program, which creates a lot of interest because, if it's a free trial of a loyalty scheme, people perceive that there's a lot of value. And of course, there are many advantages. They have many partners. They offer streaming services, TV, Netflix, and stuff like that. So that's also a successful case of a company that has been opening up the loyalty scheme for free for a short period to get people interested and then convert them into customers.
So nice. So loyalty used with creativity and innovation and can reach all the flow, all the touch points. And you made me recall one case in Canada, in the Ontario province. Looks like you can only buy liquor, alcoholic beverages, in a state-owned retailer called LCBO. So LCBO is the unique alternative to buy liquor, but even though they have a loyalty program, and then you ask why someone that has no competition runs a loyalty program, and they answer that it's so relevant to get to know the customers and to customers to identify themselves, and they have their behavior, and they see the restaurants. When you eat outside, you can buy your wine or your whiskey in the restaurant or at the bar. So they say, we compete with restaurants and with bars, because if people go outside, they don't drink the liquor they buy to consume at home with friends. So incredible how the loyalty can impact all the moments in the strategy, and thanks for sharing it. And I'd like to go to a very hot topic, not only in Brazil, but worldwide, which is the artificial intelligence, AI. So everybody is talking about AI. Every conference room from any subject matter is discussing AI. We know that AI can make processes more automated and more efficient. We also know that AI can make better decisions in terms of hyper-personalization or next best offer, next best action, whatever we can call in the loyalty scheme. What else have you seen, or which cases have you seen regarding AI that you can share with us?
Well, that's really a hot topic. And in fact, We have just launched our research on Italian companies, and we have asked a very detailed question on the use cases that they deem more relevant. So I'll be very happy to share that as soon as I get the results. So maybe if we meet again later during the year, I'll do that. But apart from the Italian case, I mentioned Starbucks before. So let me just stay on the Starbucks case again, because I've had a chance to explore it in depth. They have shared at an investors presentation a couple of years ago their vision for AI, and I really think it's a very good example. They see the application of AI as a virtuous circle, starting from improving efficiency in the store, and they cite specifically two applications: better staff scheduling, that is, by predicting better how many people you need at every single time in the day in every store, you can free up resources, you can use and place your personnel more efficiently, and by being able to predict when the big coffee machines that they employ get broken, they can do preventing maintenance, because these machines are critical to the experience of the customer. If they break down, and they do break down because they have a lot of traffic and usage, this impacts the experience severely. So the company needs to do preventive maintenance, and this is very much based on good predictions made with AI models. So in the store, if they schedule the stuff correctly and if they do maintenance appropriately, they save money, they save resources, and they save the time of the employees, who can then interact with the customer for other things. They can have a chat, they can say hello, they can read people's names from the coffee cups, and that's it. At the same time, they see AI working online for the customer, because they send hyper personalized offers to the customer apps. As I said, every time you open the app, you get a new different offer highlight. This keeps it fresh, and if it's relevant because it's based on good prediction models, then the customer is likely to engage more easily. And then the closing point in the circle is that by using the insight gained from the behavior of the customers in the store and on the app, and this goes back to the second superpower that I was mentioning, using the insight, the company is able to improve the basics of the marketing mix,
Yeah.
improve, for example, the assortment by looking at if people like sugar or not in the drinks. They can develop drinks that are more sugary or less sugary, for example, and change the menu. Or, and this is another of my favorite examples, by looking at the geolocation of customers who place their orders in advance and pay in advance, the company has been able to decide to introduce a new store format, which is totally cashierless. People don't sit, they just come in, they have already ordered from the smartphone, paid on the smartphone, they just pick up their drink and go. These stores are placed in big cities where people are on the move, like around train stations in Shanghai, in New York. And it's interesting because it's a store format innovation, which is a strategic thing for a retailer, and it's based on looking at the data of the customers using the app. So I think this is very much a good innovation circle that you can have with AI.
Nice, very nice example that can be applied in almost every industry. So preventive maintenance, defining merchandise mix, defining store format, employee scheduling. So very nice. Thanks for sharing. And we will talk a little bit about sustainability and a concept that you brought 2 years ago that we also love it, which is the citizen centricity. We talk a lot about customer centricity. Companies that focus on their customers will be more well succeeded. And when we talk about citizen centricity or citizen experience management, we are looking for another perspective. So this consumer, behind this consumer, there is a person, and this person likes to make business with companies that have the same values or that have the same purpose or a similar purpose or an aligned purpose according to each consumer. So I'd like you to explore a little bit more about that. And again, I love it, the term.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, this idea of the citizen relationship management came 3 years ago when we started a research effort into understanding how loyalty and sustainability were connected. Because 3-4 years ago, there was a lot of talking about sustainability. When I say sustainability, I mean both environmental and social sustainability, actions that would, help support and preserve the environment and society. And we believed that loyalty programs can do a lot on this front, the front of helping the company communicate better the actions they do as far as sustainability, the values they have, and engage. First of all, the best customers they have, because the members of the loyalty schemes are the best customers that the company have. So if you engage them, you can really have an impact. And so we started looking at what loyalty programs around the world were doing as far as sustainability. We collected almost 100 case studies. We saw that some companies were very, very easy and basic. For example, the customer does all the work, you collect all the points, and then you can donate the points to a good cause. It is good, but the company is doing very little in this case. Then there are many, many other cases where the company is actually investing, because the company rewards the customer when the customer is doing some good deeds, like asking for a paper cup instead of a plastic one. That's Costa Coffee loyalty scheme. Asking the hotel not to change the linen or the bath stuff, because this way you avoid some plastic and you use less detergent. So when people engage in environmentally friendly actions, buying used goods, recycling, the company can provide loyalty points or discounts or any other type of rewards. So that was a very common approach of the company engaging really in a sustainability action and making the customers see that it was real. And then there were even other cases where the company was developing approaches that would teach customers how to be more sustainable, support them in living sustainable lives. I mentioned Sorgenia, the app that helps you understand how you consume energy and how to consume less energy. That's a very good approach of merging sustainability and loyalty. What happens? We did this piece of research 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and then we did it again to check if companies were continuing on this path. And what we see, unfortunately, is that companies, some of these programs have been closed, have been discontinued, and companies are not really communicating very much about the results of their sustainability efforts, which is a pity. probably it's connected to a greater tendency that it even has a name. It's called greenwashing, which is not greenwashing. Greenwashing means being silent about the environment, and it's a new term that has been coined because more and more companies are being silent about the results they have achieved as far as sustainability. There may be many, many different reasons for this. The times are changing. Your environmental efforts need cooperation with many, many other players to be successful. I'm not getting into this. I'm just saying that, unfortunately, on the environmental side of sustainability, we are seeing a slowdown. But let me get to the citizen point, because that's your question, and I remember your question. There is another very important sustainability, and that is social sustainability. I'll tell you
Yeah.
about Italy. Italy is a country where 25% of the inhabitants are more than 65 years of age. The average in the world is 6%. So we have four times as many elderly as the rest of the world. We have a situation of the elderly being vulnerable more and more. Salaries have not been growing that much over the past years in Italy. It's the least growing salary across European countries. So our society in my country is going to go through tensions. With so many fragile elderly, the pension system will be put at a strain. This means that people have concerns. So there is a big space for brands and companies to reassure people. And you can do it by providing help, by providing services, by supporting people's vulnerabilities. Even Tesco 20 years ago, they said that they saw the elderly using the points to buy the bread for their everyday consumption. So I see that today companies can really do a lot to support a more consistent, a more tightly woven society, because there are many, many strains in many countries, and in my country, definitely. So let me cite another loyalty case that I like. The Co-op UK, the cooperative is one of the main supermarket chains. They have an app. On the app, you can see with geolocation, you can see the charities that are closest to your home or to the
Mm.
place where you work, and you can choose to read about them, to learn about them, and to donate your points. And you donate actually 1% of your spending every time you shop, and the co-op, they match your 1%, and they also donate 1%, the same amount,
Mm-hmm.
to the charity of your
Nice.
choice. And by learning about that charity, you can go and you can become a volunteer. You can go and donate your old clothes, for example. So that's a very interesting way of thinking, as you said, of
Mm-hmm.
consumers as human beings, not only consumers. That was the idea behind the citizens' relationship management.
Very nice. I like it. The approach on the elderly challenge you are facing and will face. Brazil is going on the same direction. Our population is getting older and older, and we spend a lot of money in the government mechanism, so there will not have enough money to good pension plans, so they are always changing the age you can stop working. So it is a challenge. And I also think it's interesting to share that the stock exchange in Brazil, it's putting some rules for the big companies to explain what they're doing in terms of environment. So not all companies are ready to deliver that, so it will be also a challenge. And we see an opportunity of someone creating a green loyalty program, maybe a coalition program that can offer solutions for big companies that don't know how to deliver the environmental initiatives. Have you seen any green loyalty around the world that you believe it's a reference?
Well, there are several, as I said. What's coming? Well, there are many. One that comes to my mind, for example, in the airline industry is Qantas in Australia. And that's interesting because they have developed a loyalty program where, of course, you have the levels and you fly and you qualify for, upgrades, and you can grow in the levels. But at the same time, you can earn green miles. So they understood
Mm-hmm.
that you cannot make your loyalty program entirely about green because some customers don't care, and because you have to apply probably to a more general approach. Let me open some brackets here. It's not that people don't care, it's that uh, socially beneficial behaviors are very different from consumer behaviors. For
Mm-hmm.
example, in order to make an impact, when you want to be sustainable, you need collective action. It's not an individual action. So people sometimes they don't engage because they think I can't make the difference. Another reason why these behaviors are difficult to stimulate is because they are very, very theoretical. How many people understand the concept of CO2 emissions? It's very, very intangible.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
it's difficult to make people engage when the benefit is intangible, and difficult to
gotcha.
understand. And last, these behaviors have effects very much down in time. So you don't have an effect now, you will have an effect over time. Uh, and for all these three reasons, the sustainable behaviors are difficult to stimulate and to reward because people tend not to engage. So going back to your question, there are interesting schemes where people are rewarded. Uh, Again, as I said, if they recycle, if they send back the old version of the product, the bottles, the bags,
Mm-hmm.
if they buy used clothes instead of new ones, if they take part in environment cleaning activities. I'm thinking of Decathlon, which is a sporting goods retailer in Europe, or I'm thinking of RAI, which is a mountain equipment retailer in the States. They have very successful environmental programs, but everybody faces these three challenges of sustainable behaviors that I mentioned: intangibility, need for collective action, and effect over time.
Very nice. So we are reaching the final part of our episode, which is fantastic. So I'd like to congratulate you for everything you shared. It was very rich, and I'm sure that people that our audience and people that will be with us on this episode will learn a lot and will find more ways to better use the loyalty initiative. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about your celebration. You're completing 25 years as the Loyalty Observatory. What kind of celebration are you preparing, and how can Brazilians participate? Will you have online access to the celebrations? Are you planning?
Thank you. Actually, Okay, we're going to have our annual conference on October 16. It will be in presence in Parma. So, of course, if there are Brazilians that are traveling in Europe or in Italy around those dates, it would be very, very nice to have you as our guests. We expect around 600 people attending. And so we are planning a very big birthday cake. So I will share pictures of the cake. But apart from that, we have invited some international guests. We have an academic from the States, Professor Puntoni. He's of Italian origin, and he's an expert in AI. And so we will have more content on AI to share. We have invited a retailer from Australia who has been able to turn around the company that was almost bankrupt thanks to their loyalty program. And that's Meyer, the department store. And last but not least, we have invited Dots because also Dots is celebrating 25 years. So I'm really happy to say that they have agreed to participate. So we will have the CEO participating and
Otávio.
sharing how they have been relevant. Exactly, Octavio, how they've been relevant for 25 years. So we actually do not do the streaming, but we record the conference and it will be online after a few weeks. So if you can't come, then you will be able to see the content after a few weeks.
Very nice. So we have a good excuse to go to Italy on October and to pass through Parma, enjoy Parmesan, enjoy prosciutto, and enjoy your loyalty conference. So once again, thanks a lot for your participation. E é com uma grande alegria que a gente encerra aqui mais um episódio do LAB LoyaltyCast, o podcast da Loyalty Academy Brasil, uma edição especial em inglês com a Cristina participando diretamente da Itália. E desejo a todos bons negócios e nos vemos nos próximos episódios. Um abraço.